Oh, hello. It is lovely to sort of see you all here. Welcome. This is how to practice anything, but mostly music. But yeah, anything. I'm Moose or Jess or Musical Moose. I am so excited to be at VGM together with you all. I always get super inspired from conventions like this, and I don't know about you all, but I definitely do. I don't know if you all got inspired by maybe like Ashanti's jam session panel, or maybe you watch like David Piano or Sab Irene like absolutely tear it up, or maybe you're going to watch like Jer Roke and JD Aster after this, and you're going to get so inspired by all these awesome musicians, and you're going to be like, oh man, I should practice. And yeah, you should. And I am here to help you kind of figure out how to practice better. Um, Hopefully, we'll see what happens. Oh, hey, chat. Oh, we got Chomby, we got Eric, we got Arrow. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you all. Um, so yeah, let's talk about practice. But why, you might ask? I took piano lessons as a kid and I hated it. I took lessons this one time and practicing, I never had time to practice. I really want to get good at this thing, but like practice is drudgery. Practicing is how you improve. And I know you all know this. I know you do. Um, and I think in a lot of cases, students aren't taught enough about how to practice, like what makes effective practice. And I think there are a lot of pervasive myths about practicing. And we'll cover some of those in a little bit. Um, Ineffective practice, if you try it and you were never taught how to practice, you weren't shown how, and you try it, if you're ineffective, it's really frustrating. It's really demoralizing. And then you go, well, I guess I'm just not good at this. And it's like, well, maybe we just haven't taught you how to practice the right way yet. Also, because I'm a middle and high school music teacher, and that's why we're talking about practicing. Practice is huge. So, what we're going to talk about in this panel, we're going to talk about how our brains respond to practice. We're going to talk about some common pitfalls, and I promise you, I have done every single thing on this list of things that I'm about to tell you not to do. We're going to talk about strategies and structures for practice time, and lots of these are suggestions. You can incorporate as many of them as you like. Don't feel like you have to incorporate everything from this panel, but they're ways to get you to think about practicing a little bit differently. And yeah, a lot of this is specific to music because, I'm taking the M from VGM together and I'm leaning really hard into that. But like, you can apply this to lots of other skills. Practice is practice no matter whether it's a sport or music or another type of art or whatever you like to do. Practice is practice and your brain is going to respond a similar way. If you have questions at any point, by the way, definitely throw them in chat. I have chat up. We can talk about questions you have. There will be time at the end. I'll save a few minutes. And if you have specific practice questions, Moose, I keep trying to get this one thing faster and I can never get it faster. Moose, I keep trying to play this one really hard thing and I can't get it. If you have questions, you should definitely, give me the specific questions at the end and anything else as we go. So let's talk about how our brains respond to practice. Our brains are really adaptable. Good news. Good news, everybody. Your brain is neuroplastic and you create new connections all the time. And the way you create those connections alters the structure of your brain. You have gray matter in your brain that grows in the cerebellum if you're a musician. And the cerebellum is responsible for things like coordinating your motor movements, your cognitive skill learning, and your music processing ability. So that's a good thing overall if you have growth in the gray matter of your cerebellum. Your brain really likes to identify strategies and create shortcuts. Something that you do more often, your brain is going to find a shortcut to do it or create a pathway that's quicker. The first few times you do something, you might be creating a pathway that's like a little bit zigzagged and it kind of goes off on tangents, but the more you do things, the more your brain is going to create a straight pathway for you to get the result you want. Eric in chat, Moose, I keep trying to play new instruments rather than getting better at any one of them. How do I make myself stop? If I had figured that out, Eric, I'd be doing it. I'm guilty of that too. Thank you, chat. Repetition legitimizes. It legitimizes and it strengthens, which is why experts are more effective than novices. And this leads me to my first kind of soapbox point here. about talent. And I bet there are a lot of people, maybe in chat or just in general in the world, who goes, well, I'm not talented, so I don't play music. Oh, I tried piano, but I wasn't talented, so I quit. Oh, I know this one kid, in my school who's really talented and so much better than me, so I just didn't try. Talent, I think, in general, is more of a myth than a fact. Yes, every now and then you have somebody whose brain is hyper wired to be really good at something. But in general, talent is more hard work than it is anything. So if you're saying, oh, well, I'm not talented, all you're saying is, I haven't put the work in that this other person put in. This is really the soapbox point. Shows like, America's Got Talent, shows like The Voice, shows like that, I think, put a lot of emphasis on the end results, and they almost never show you the process, what people had to do to get there. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's so much work. There are so many hours that go into it. And all you see is this person who is talented, and you don't see how hard they work to get there. So I'm telling you that if you decide to practice, you too can get good. Your brain can get good. It's capable. Oh, Eric is already getting to a common practice pitfall. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I promise we're getting there. Yeah, such a buzzword. You're right, David Piano. I agree. Oh, Allison Martin, you've anticipated another slide of mine perfectly. You got this. So we're talking about practicing something. We're talking about doing something over and over. But there's also a caveat with your brain that there's a thing called habituation. And habituation happens when we do the same thing too many times. And habituation just means that your brain creates a shortcut and goes offline. It stops thinking about what you're doing. And we'll see in a bit that practice really needs your brain to be involved. So we're going to talk about how do we practice but avoid the habituation where our brain goes offline. We're also going to talk about how to avoid frustration, because I don't think I need to give you a source on this one. When you're frustrated, you're not going to do your best work. When you're frustrated, you're not going to do your best practice. When you're frustrated, you're probably not going to reach the goal that you set for yourself. So we'll talk about that too. All right, so we'll talk about some common practice pitfalls. And I promise you, I've done every single one of these things. If you've done it, go ahead and throw a me in the chat or something so I don't feel so alone. If you've done it, if you've heard of it, if you're like, oh yeah, I was told to do that by a teacher, just throw me in there. So common practice pitfall number 1, you got to practice it 10 times before you can move on. You've got this tough section, you got to practice it 10 times. And if you can't do it 10 times, you don't get to move on. Who has heard that? Who has done that? Raise his hand. Thank you. Thank you. Repetition frustrates. I agree, Eric. Yeah. So anybody think they can tell me why this is bad news bears? Why, if this is the goal, why is that probably not going to work for most people? What I always heard was you got to get it perfect 3 times in a row. You have to restart your combo. Yeah, I've heard that one a lot. Sometimes it's helpful. But if you're doing it a whole bunch, why might it not be helpful? Songs of Healing, I'm so glad you heard it and you are like, yeah, that's not something I'm going to carry on. Negative reinforcement, says Eric MG. Great thought. Another take an ID, that's just checking off a task list. You may get something out of it, but you may not. That's true. That's true. So I think a big part of the thing that you shouldn't practice it 10 times before you get to do anything else is because it's habituation. If you do the same thing several times in a row, your brain actually only prepares for the task at the beginning of that block. If you sit down and you say, okay, I'm doing this 10 times, can't do anything else till I do it 10 times, or I can't, got to do it 3 times right, or the combo restarts, your brain actually only prepares that one time, and then it tends to go offline. So if you change up the task, or if you introduce some element of randomness, it makes your brain do more work, and more work means more progress. So it may frustrate you, but it also, your brain only decides at the beginning that, okay, here's what we're doing. Let me prepare the motor movement. Let me prepare what I'm doing. And you don't get 10 times benefit out of it. You get 1 time benefit out of it, and then probably also some frustration. Yeah. Songs of Healing says it's better to engage in it differently, messing with rhythm or something, than just over and over and over and not be engaging by the end. 100%. 100% right. Yeah. I love that I've got some information here, but you all have some really great information to share in the chat too. So if something occurs to you, please pop it up. It's probably helpful to somebody. Yeah. Allison Martin Trombone says, that's good to know. I like doing one chunk, say 3 times well, then I add a bar in front, then one behind. That's a great strategy. We're absolutely getting there too. All right, common practice pitfall number 2. Practicing. Oh, and I've done this. Please, type me to make me feel a little less bad, and maybe the people in chat feel a little less bad. I did this so much in high school. Practicing for 3 hours one day, right before your lesson, and that's it for the week. So my saxophone lessons in high school were about half an hour away, and my mom had a minivan, and I would sit in the back row of the minivan with the middle 2 seats taken out, and I would literally be playing my saxophone in the car on the highway on the way to the lesson, doing my best to do all the things I didn't practice all that week. Eric's done this. Thank you. Songs of Healing, like, oh yes, hi, first semester of undergrad. Yeah, I feel you. Aaron, I love the comparison. This big start flossing a week before your next dentist appointment or energy. Yep, exactly. Awesome. All right, so we've got some brave souls out there willing to admit to doing this. Why is this ineffective? And I feel like Aaron's got it with the analogy there, but anybody want to talk about why this is probably ineffective? Show up for lesson and sight sing your new repertoire. Oh no! I mean, hey, you probably got really good at sight singing, right? Pull a practicing all-nighter before your first jury. Oh no. ZD Major 7 says it doesn't go to the fundamentals and it doesn't sink in. Ooh, I like that. Allison Martin Trombone says, for brass players, you never build muscles or endurance for one thing. Yeah, very true. I think a lot of us forget too that like a lot of music involves like your body, and like if you're never building the muscles on a regular basis, you don't get the benefits. Absolutely. No reps, no muscle memory. Yep. You've already forgotten what your teacher would have told you. Oh my God, it's Monica. Yes. Yeah. Probably. And it doesn't stick with you. Endurance. Yeah. And JDVGM, like studying for a test the night before. I forgot most of the info after the test. You guys got it. You absolutely got it. This kind of stuff gives you short-term gains. You might be able to do it like for the lesson, but it really doesn't do anything for you in the long term. Not muscle memory, not musicality, nothing. You get very few long-term benefits. Who needs chops anyway? All right. I've done this a whole bunch. I'm so guilty of this when I practice piano. Number 3, starting from the beginning every time. If you feel like admitting to it at this point, that's cool. But let's talk about like, why is starting from the beginning every time not very effective? Oh no, Nightbot. Pretty sure that was the one jury I nearly failed. Oh no. Juries were so intimidating. Yeah, I definitely still catch myself wanting to do this sometimes on piano. Less so on saxophone, which is my primary, but when I go to piano, for some reason my brain reverts to little tiny 5-year-old me in my piano lessons, and I try to start from the beginning every time. Darth Plague will feel like personally attacked by this relatable content. Used to do this, yeah. See, in real time, you go on autopilot and aren't really thinking about what the music is doing. Yep, absolutely true, Allison Martin. Yeah. ZD, you've hit it, exactly. Then you get the beginning down really well. Measures 45 to 46, not so much. Yeah. You get real good at the place you keep starting from, but if the problem is later on, or if the stuff you're less confident in is later on, but you go back to the beginning because you're like, let me get a running start at it. I'm sure I've got it this time. No, I'm going to try again. I'll be ready for it this time. These are lies I tell myself. If you start from the beginning every time, that's what you practice, and you don't actually practice the thing that's hard. Yeah. Ooh, good connection, Nundalos. Probably for the same reason I couldn't tell you the 8th letter of the alphabet without starting from A. Yeah, good point. All right, this one's a little bit tricky. Number 4, warming up the exact same way every time. Good for one thing, bad for another thing. What's it good for and what's it bad for? This is a 2-part question. Your answers will be graded on syntax and grammar. No, they won't. Can pick up from any point in the alphabet, but I don't know what number they are. I don't know if I could do that. OMG, it's Monica, my toxic trait. I don't warm up. Love it. I love it. Thank you for the honesty here. Songs of Healing, you're not warming up your brain at that point. You're not engaged. Ooh. Pugilia H, what is warming up? I love it. I love how many people relate to this. Could be that the specific warm up isn't warming up the skill set that you need that day. Very true. Very true. I love how many people are calling themselves out in chat going, yeah, I don't warm up. There are days when I don't either. I'm with you guys. Yeah, Songs of Healing, I'm with you. I'm with you. ZD says, and if you haven't planned the practice session to address something specific, it's less effective anyway. Yeah. So warming up the same way every time, if you're habituated to this exercise, if you do the exact same scales every time, the exact same arpeggio every time, the exact same whatever you do every time, you're probably not going to get very much, if any, technique development out of it. If you're doing it to get yourself mentally prepared and you're like, this is my practice routine, I always start my practice with this scale, with this exercise, with this arpeggio, that can be a good signal to your brain that says, okay, we're in practice mode. But if you're like, ooh, I'm not actually warming up the skills I'm going to use, I'm not actually warming up, or I'm doing these scales, but I do it the same way every time, my brain's already turned off. I'm not actually thinking about the thing I'm doing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It can be good if you're trying to establish a routine, if you're trying to warm up a specific skill you need, but it can be bad if you just kind of do it and that's it. All right. So we'll talk about like how to set some goals and use this to meet your goals. Yeah. Allison Martin trombone. I love this quote. It's good to think about playing when you're playing. I'm with you. Yeah. All right. You guys already hit this one. Practice pitfall number 5. Practice makes perfect. I'm just going to skip because you all know that practice makes permanent. Practice does not make perfect. I hate when people say that. I am that music teacher or, you know, that nerd who goes, actually, practice makes permanent. Every time I hear people say it. The way you practice is the way you will perform. And I tell my students this constantly. You can tell because the teacher voice comes out when I say it. The way you practice is the way you'll perform. And usually this is in reference to, like, you know, concert etiquette. If you are practicing with good posture, if you're practicing, you know, taking it seriously, that's the way you're going to perform. So no matter what you're practicing, it makes permanent. It doesn't make perfect. Ooh, the number of parents that I corrected that tried, yeah, practice makes perfect. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people believe this one. And I think it's just like pithy and alliterative and people have heard it, so they like to, you know, it's about something good. It's about practicing. It's about being perfect, but, you know, not actually true. Good posture? Question mark. All right, practice pitfall number 6. Definitely me on piano. Stopping/slowing down at the hard part. Why is this bad? Or why might this not be effective? Yeah, David Piano's right. Get your students in here. Send the VOD to them. Yeah, good intent behind it. Absolutely. You're right, Allison Martin. Yeah. Improvement is perfect and perfect is irrelevant. Ooh. Interesting. I feel like I have to like think about that one for a while. ZD, know your metronome, love your metronome. That's something I need on a t-shirt. Yeah. Still thinking about that, yeah. So stopping and slowing down at the hard part. If you take the section in isolation, if measures 45 to 46 are the hard part for you, if you just take measures 45 and 46 and you play them slowly, and you play them slowly, and then you play them a little faster, that's a fine way to do it. That's absolutely fine. That's a great strategy. But if you're practicing your piece up to a certain point every time and then it falls apart because you've hit the hard part, you're teaching your brain that it should stop there every time. This is literally creating a new pathway in your brain that says we stop when we get to measures 45 and 46. We slow down when we get to measures 45 and 46. If you always play the section slower in context doing the work there, you're teaching yourself that it goes that way. So if you're taking that section out, you're isolating it and you're working it up to tempo, no problem with that. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're starting from the beginning or from measure 40 and as soon as you hit 45, 46, you slow down, you're working against yourself. So know your metronome, love your metronome, as ZD says. Hey, Jer. Metronome is love. Metronome is life. Absolutely. Absolutely. Consistency over speed. That's one thing I tell my students a lot. I don't care about how fast you can play it. I care about how consistently you can play it. Say that one a lot. Yeah. And Songs of Healing from back before, if that's how you practice it, that's how you play it, and it'll fall apart. Yeah, because how you practice is how you perform. Exactly. Metronome says metronome is boo. I used to hate my metronome so much, and I think I still kind of do on the piano a bit. On saxophone, I'm all about that metronome life. Yeah. Yeah, Chombi. It's like on repeat, right? Absolutely. All right. Last one, and then I'll stop telling you negative things. So we'll start talking the positives. Common practice pitfall number 7. I talk myself out of practicing plenty of times with this one. I don't have an hour to practice today, or half an hour, or 5 hours, however long you tend to practice. I don't have that time today, so I'm not going to do it. I'm calling out Eric MG personally. This is actually, we're back in like 2006 and Ashton Kutcher is going to come out and you've been punked. Yeah. Somebody tell me why this is not true, or how can I think about this differently? Jer feels it too. Ooh, P. Juliet H. Changing it out to a drum groove, and that makes a difference. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. Chombi, you've described my life. I see you, Chombi. Waldhorn are feeling this. I love how many people are finding this relatable. Drum Ultima hates me. I talk myself out of practicing all the time. Practice isn't just playing. Ooh, interesting. Exactly. All of us have the ability to bend time and space, and that's really about what this panel is about. Yeah. Nah. Any practice you can do is better than none at all. Literally any. Even if you just get 5 minutes in, that's 5 minutes better than you were yesterday. Literally any practice. And a lot of the time, that's how I get myself to pick up my instrument in the first place. I say, I'm just going to play for 5 minutes. I can play for 5 minutes. What is it? Kimmy Schmidt? I can do anything for 10 seconds. And then the 10 seconds just starts over again, right? I can play my instrument for 5 minutes. And a lot of the time, that's just the push I need. And then I'm like, well, anything over this is a win at this point. And then I just do the thing. But if I'm not feeling it after 5 minutes, I allow myself to stop. And it's still 5 minutes better than I was yesterday. And if I keep playing, that's still great, right? You can't lose with that. Any practice is better than none at all. Ooh, ZD, I like that. Giving you 15-minute practice routines. That's great. Hey, Tristan. Huh. All right. Any other things you've noticed, or any other things you want to talk about with regard to practicing and you're like, is this actually good or is this actually bad? Before we move on to what you're supposed to do, anything else that you've noticed? To be honest, setting up a woodwind to play for 5 minutes, so it takes more than that to set it up and clean it after. You tell yourself you need an hour. I tell my students all the time, I'm like, set it up and lay it in the case somewhere where your cat, your dog, your younger brother is not going to bother it. Leave it set up. Just don't put the reed on it. And then anytime you're like, I'm bored, I have nothing to do, you're going to see your instrument. You're going to go, well, maybe I can mess around with that for 5 minutes. So if you leave it set up, maybe somewhere where nobody can get to it, or you get a decent stand for it, that's a great way to lower that barrier to entry for yourself. It's all about the brain hacks and like figure out like what is your brain's like barrier to entry here, and figuring out how do we remove that. Yeah. You did practice every day. Ooh, Alison Martin, I like to play, and if it turns into practice, that's good. Love it. Jara says, how do you speed up a passage if you always practice slowly? Great question. Couple of things about practicing slowly. You definitely need to start slowly to let your brain engage, to like get the muscles moving the way they need to move. And then you practice it slowly, but you move your muscles quickly, right? Like on saxophone, if I'm going for a B, and I'm practicing slowly, B is just one finger. I don't go like B super slow. I snap my finger down because, you know, at speed, I'm going to need to move that quickly. And I still play slowly, but I practice moving quickly to get there, if that makes any sense. And that gets my muscles engaged quickly. And then you can do some different exercises with the rhythm. This one I'm stealing from Mateus. Mateus D'Souza, he was saying something about like if you've got a whole run of 16th notes and you're having a hard time getting them up to speed, do 2/16ths and an eighth, 2/16ths and an eighth. Then you do an eighth and 2/16ths, eighths and 2/16ths, and then 16th, eighth, 16th, 16th, eighth, 16th. And you change the rhythm so like you're doing small chunks quickly, and then you keep changing it to chain longer and longer bits together. Or you start slowly, and this is a game I play with myself. I start slowly, and every time I get it, the metronome goes up 3 clicks. If I don't get it, the metronome goes down 3 clicks. And so I try to do it not to the point where I'm habituated to it, where I've stopped thinking about it, but to the point where like I'm really pushing myself. Yeah, great question, Jer. Oh, lots of chat going on. I'm sorry, I'm going to get caught up here for a second. I don't want to miss questions if I'm seeing questions. If you can play it slowly, you can play it quickly. Yeah. It takes a lot of slow playing in order to play quickly. What are my thoughts on if you practice it slow, you're going to play it slow? I mean, that's true to an extent, right? Like if you've got this one passage that you never work up to speed, you're never going to have it up to speed. But everybody's got to start slowly. Everybody's got to do things slowly sometimes to get their mind engaged. All right, so I guess it's a double-edged sword in that way too, right? You do need to practice slow. You just can't always practice it slow. Yeah. Bardic Knowledge, thanks for stopping by. All right. So I think I may have everybody's question, but if I didn't get to your question, please ask it again, because I don't want to miss. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I see Fear of Fave. I've had cases where I practiced one day, but it sounded worse the next day. Oh man, practicing is not always linear, and that can be really frustrating. I feel like I've had days where I practice it worse the next day. I've definitely had days where I practice a thing, and then I have my lesson, and it's worse for my lesson. And I'm like, but I practiced it. It was so good yesterday. It was so good right before my lesson, and then I have my lesson, and it's trash. And I'm like, what happened? It happens sometimes. Practice isn't linear. You got to forgive yourself. There are just as many days where I can't get a thing one day, and the next day I come back and I have it. So it's not linear. Give yourself some grace. Yeah. Yeah, another taken idea. Starting slow doesn't have to mean staying slow. Absolutely. All right. So I've told you all the things not to do. What do you do? Great question, chat. Thanks for asking. Here are some strategies. I'm going to talk about each one of these, and not everything is going to apply to everybody all the time. It's going to be up to you to figure out, like, oh, that's the thing I've been missing, or, oh, nobody ever told me that, or it's going to be up to you to figure out what works for you. So hopefully something that I'm saying here is going to resonate, and you're going to say, that's what I've been missing. And if not, maybe something somebody says in chat will help you out. All right, so number one, probably the biggest one that probably applies to everybody, is set yourself a routine. Give yourself time, give yourself space, and no distractions. I have my metronome on my phone and my tuner on my phone, but then I also have like my, standalone like metronome and tuner, because if I have my phone, I'm going to get distracted. No distractions. Helps you get in the zone a little bit better. I don't think I need to sell anybody too much on that one, but having a routine time, a routine space, and no distractions is huge. Number two, set goals, both short and long term. And this is where a teacher can be really helpful. If you're like, well, I have this long-term goal. I really want to play the marimba like Drum Ultima. I really want to play the saxophone like Sab Irene. I really want to play piano like Jer Roke. And if those are your long-term goals and you're going, but like, how do I get from here to there? A teacher can be really helpful. If you've been doing this by yourself a little bit, you might have a different long-term goal, or you might be more experienced in breaking this down into short-term goals for you. Short-term goals need to be a little bit more manageable than having like this big nebulous idea of like, I want to play like blah, or I want to play faster, or I want to play better. Short-term goals should be, I want to get this measure 45 to measure 46 up 20 BPM in this practice session. The more concrete you can make it, the more likely it is you're going to achieve it. And ideally, your short-term goals fit in getting you toward your long-term goal. But again, having a teacher, they'll help you focus that, and they'll help you break it down into good goals. So having short-term goals, even this is my goal for this particular practice session helps a lot. Steps 3 and 4 are great ways to set or to get to those short-term goals. Break it down. Go a little at a time, then add on. I think it was Allison Martin Trombone who was saying earlier in chat, like I do just a little bit and then I see if I can add the measure after. I see if I can add the measure before. I try and add on just a little bit at a time. That's a great way to do it. The key is to take a chunk you're going to be successful at. And I'm so sorry. I saw somebody say in chat, P. Julia H., what I've been missing is I've had a hard time being bad at things sometimes. I feel you super hard there. That is me. I set a chunk that I know I can achieve. Super slow, just this much. Maybe it's just like 2 beats, but I do just that much. And then I feel good. I achieved it. Great. Okay, can I do 3 beats? Okay, I achieved it. Can I do 4 beats? And you can break it down that small for yourself. It's about knowing how it works for you. So give yourself something you can achieve. So slow it down, then work it up. We talked about that too. Number 5, interleaved versus blocked practice. I'm so sorry for the educational buzzwords there. Interleaved versus blocked depends on what works for you. Interleaving means that you're taking one skill or one chunk and a second chunk, and you are like going back and forth between the two. So you've got like thing 1 and thing 2, and you keep switching back and forth. Like I've got measures 45 and 46, and then I've got measures 51 and 52. And so I'm going to practice 45 and 46 for a little bit, and then I'm going to go to the other ones, and then I'm going to go back. So that's interleaving. Blocked is, okay, for the next 20 minutes, I'm just working 45 and 46. Some people like to get in the flow state, like to have their brain focused on one thing. You just got to be careful not to get habituated. That's blocked practice if you want to like carve out a large chunk of time. Interleaving is going back and forth in shorter chunks. Number 6, growth versus fixed mindset. We've heard this in like business all the time. Growth is like, or a fixed mindset would be like, I can't do it. And growth is, I can't do it yet. Both are true, but one of those leaves you room for improvement. If you say, I can't play this passage, like, yeah, that's right. And you're not going to be able to play the passage either. If you say, I can't play this passage yet, also true, but you're leaving yourself room to be able to play it in the future. The more growth, the more, I can't do it that way yet. The more you add yet to your statements, the more you're going to end up in that growth mindset where like, I'm going to be able to do it. If I work on this, it's going to get better. Oh, buzzwords. We're going to talk about SMART goals. I mean, if we want to talk about good short and long-term goals, yeah, the SMART goals are really, yeah. I feel you. I got more. I got 3 whole slides of this. Number 7, error identification and recording yourself. Studies literally show that performers who are able to record themselves and then listen back and then try the thing again made fewer errors than people who tried it, were given the same like 5-minute break time period, and then just got to try it again. If you record yourself, if you listen back and figure out what you want to do better, you're going to do it better the next time. Number 8, take a break. This may seem counterintuitive, but I've got an hour to practice. I don't have time to waste. I can't take a break. Take a break. The more you minimize your frustration, the better you're going to do. Number 9, stand on one leg. This might seem ridiculous, but literally changing your position, making your brain think about something different is going to make your brain work better. I don't know how it works, but it works. If you go from sitting to standing, if you go from standing to sitting, if you go from standing to standing on one leg, the mere act of your brain trying to process the new thing helps. I don't know. It's magic. Number 10, chunking and working backwards. So I think somebody else was talking about this. You start at the end of a piece, and this is honestly how I teach marching band drill. We start with the last set, and then you go to the set before it, and you move there. And then you go to the third to the last set, and you move the last two. You start at the last measure, and then you do the last two measures, and then the last three measures. This works because you're always going into something that you know, and you're teaching your brain that it keeps going. You're never starting from the same place every time. So your brain isn't getting used to starting in the same place every time. And you're always playing through, and you're always familiar with what comes next. This is a huge, like this can be a game changer if you're really working on something dense. Take chunks and stitch them together from the end. 20 yards, 4 beats. Yeah. Give me that jazz run, Eric MG. Yeah. Sit on a yoga ball. I love that suggestion, Songs of Healing. Yeah. How does a tuba player stand on one leg? Out of spite. They will do it, and they will do it out of spite. Last 3 sets on one leg. Number 11, whole part whole. So play the whole piece, play part of the piece, go back and play the whole piece. This strategy can be really good at the beginning and toward the end of learning a piece. So trying to understand how the piece goes and then practicing a part of it and then trying to put it back together. That's good at the beginning and the end. In the middle, you probably want to be focusing on individual parts. Last slide of strategies here. Number 12, change up the tempo, which I believe we were already talking about. You may think you know how that rhythm goes, but do you know how that rhythm goes at 60 BPM? Right? Like, if you have been used to playing this thing fast, make yourself play it slowly. All of a sudden, your brain has to turn all the way on. If you've been practicing a thing slowly, turn it up to medium speed. See if you've got it. Changing up the tempo means your brain is doing something new. It's processing new information, or information in a new way, rather. So, yeah, ZD, I agree. Why isn't there a single thing from anyone who's ever been in a marching band that doesn't make it sound like the most hellish experience for everybody? We all love it. It's like a cult. That's, yeah, get that on a t-shirt. Number 13, mental practice. Studies have shown that you literally thinking through your music provides almost exactly the same benefit as actually doing it. And especially if you're thinking about exactly how your muscles need to move. I can't tell you how many times in high school I would sit there with a pencil or a pen and like, yeah, my teacher would be lecturing or we'd be reading something out of the book and I'd be running scales on it. And actually it was a good thing to do. All right, mental practice, thinking through your music, thinking about the movements you need to make, still really good. Number 14, as Tom Haverford and Donna Meagle would say, treat yourself. Literally bribe yourself into practicing. Literally bribe yourself for doing the thing you want to do. If that's, a piece of candy at the end of your practice session, if that's like time snuggling your cat at the end of your practice session, go snuggle your cat anyway. Whatever thing that's going to motivate you, treat yourself. Number 15, keep a practice journal. And David Piano says writing down my goals has helped me tremendously in just remembering what I want to practice. Yeah, practice journals are great for that. I have 8-Bit Music Theory's practice journal, and I really like it because it's got like staff paper on one side and like, lines on the other. And I just write down like bullet points of what I did. And sometimes I do a star for like what I want to come back to. And then I get to write out, my transcriptions on the other side or whatever I was trying to do. So keeping a practice journal works for me. Number 16 is to find what works for you. Maybe something in here sparked your interest. Maybe something in chat sparked your interest. Find what works for you, please. P. Julia H., I like that strategy. Write an entire arrangement for yourself that's way too hard. Yeah, sometimes like having a project to work toward like makes you do the thing. I do that all the time with like sewing or like painting. I take on projects I have no business taking on and I figure it out. I bet you can do that too with music. Yeah. All right. Studies show people who don't just practice but who set goals and reflect on their progress and regulate their focus by keeping their brain engaged are far more effective and retain their progress better. It's all about ways to keep your brain engaged. So you know how that works for you. I can't tell you exactly how that plays out for you personally, but you know. And if you don't, you play with some of these and you figure it out. No shame in trying different things. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing right now because I do want to save some time for questions in the chat. But this is how like an interleaved practice session could look like. So you warm up, you take 2 sections of your thing that you're having a hard time with, and you break it down, you slow it down, you switch to another thing back and forth, you give yourself a break, you record yourself, you go back and you hit spots, you play it again. And the last thing I think is important, you cool down with something fun. If you're not having fun while playing music, I'm not sure why you're doing it. I'm really not. I have sources. If you want to like watch this on the VOD, if you want this presentation, I'm happy to send it to you. There are some studies linked here, and then there are some like, listicles. I promise I didn't tell you anything that I don't endorse as a music teacher, but if you want the sources, you can look at them. MLA format is the worst, yeah. But now we have some time for some individual questions. If you put something in chat before that I'm sorry I didn't see and I didn't answer for you, go ahead and throw it in now. If you've got a question, about something you're working on right now, something related to practice, we have the next like 3.5 minutes. Go for it. Let's see, APA formatting only. Agreed. Replaying is not practice. I'm really not being a smart aleck. What if you're practicing sight reading? Like say you're reading through every sheet on VG Lead Sheets. I mean, you're going to get great at sight reading. That's the skill you're practicing. So that, especially if you're thinking about it. If you're mindlessly playing through and you're not paying attention to like, if you keep missing the key signatures, if you keep missing that rhythm that comes up every time, if you keep missing, then yeah, I would say you're playing. But if you are like, ooh, I missed the key signature in the last one, I'm going to make sure I look at it this time. That's practice. You've just learned something. You've just trained your brain to do something because now you're doing it the next time and every time thereafter. So I honestly think that's practicing sight reading, and that's what that looks like. Great question. How do you practice sight reading? Yeah, by doing it just like that. But yeah, it's about the engaging your brain part. Like, ooh, what did I miss? I missed that rhythm. How am I going to get that rhythm next time? Ooh, I missed that time signature. How am I going to get that next time? Yeah. Okay, so right now most of my motivation is extrinsic, YouTube collabs, etc. Do you ever have trouble with intrinsic motivation? All the time. All the time. And I think part of the thing is what works for you is what works for you. A lot of us are told, when we study education, like, oh, you got to give those intrinsic motivators. You got to teach students to be intrinsically motivated. No external motivators, no stickers, no class parties, no whatever. Honestly, I think don't shame yourself for not having the intrinsic motivation and use the things that do work for you. If it works for you, it works for you. Doing the thing is doing the thing. Whether or not you got there because somebody else motivated you or you motivated yourself, it counts. I hope that is helpful. How do you practice sight reading not at the cost of technique? You practice sight reading slowly, I would say. If you really want to hone it, you can sight sing instead of just play on your instrument. I love that. Yeah, learning from mistakes on repeat. Yeah. So whenever I'm sight reading something, especially if it's got internal repeats, I go, I made that mistake last time. My focus on this time through that section is not to make that same mistake. Yeah. A lot of people with a lot of good information in chat here. If it's about engaging your brain, then I suppose I shouldn't practice while doing other things. Yeah. No distractions. Intrinsic motivation is flighty and can't be trusted. Yeah, I think, what was it, Stephen King, who like writes 2 pages every day, is like, it doesn't matter whether I want to do it, I write 2 pages every day. That's just what I do. Yeah. So it doesn't matter all the time. If you're intrinsically motivated, if you've got the extrinsic motivators and they work, great. Different sort of things. Had a teacher give you 2 different sight reading things, bebop and baccarat. Ooh, I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, if you want an extrinsic motivator, sure. Yeah, I'm yelling at you to practice. Go practice. Awesome. All right, so that is about time here. If you have questions about practicing, I love talking practicing. I love talking about motivating yourself or working through the lack of motivation. Ping me on Discord, please, and let's talk about it. If you have more questions, we can talk about it in the big Discord chat, or you can DM me. I'm cool with that. So thank you so much for coming to this panel. I really appreciate you all talking and especially sharing strategies with each other. Um, Thanks for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of VGM together. Goodbye.